I've lived 1,000 lives. I've piloted 1,000 souls. I've killed and fought at night just for another role.
This is the Happy Jacks RPG podcast, a roundtable discussion that's a mix of friendship, humor, unbridled enthusiasm, and tabletop RPG topics sent in from around the world.
Just for another role.
Hello, and welcome to Season 33, Episode 10 of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast. My name is Kimmy.
My name is Riley.
I'm Jay.
And I'm Clara.
And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about the pros and cons of running pre-written adventures at your table. And then we have some emails sent in. Mike is planning to publish adventures and wants to know what to include and if there's hope for small publishers. And Charger 347 talks about making magic items that aren't too complicated. If you'd like to contribute a question or topic to the show, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. Or we also have a new channel in the Discord now. So if you want to just post stuff there in the mailbag channel, you can just do that. And that's easy too. So do the thing. And people have been. I really appreciate how many emails and stuff we've gotten in. I really, good job. Everyone pat yourself in the back. Nice job. Give yourself a high five.
You got your marching orders and you marched.
It's just clapping, but that's fine.
Kimmy said jump and you said how high.
Which I appreciate.
And we all said thank you.
Then roll for dexterity. See how high you jumped.
Yes. All right.
Oh.
Announcements. So sorry about last week. We did cancel the show at the last minute. We had a safety advisory in the LA area. We don't get rain a lot. So when we get any amount of rain, our streets can't handle it and they become flood zones.
Yeah.
So literally we all, like, about an hour before the show, we all got like the emergency alert that there was an advisory, a no travel advisory in LA for a while.
We can't handle any rain, but we also got a ridiculous amount
We did.
of rain.
It was,
We got
yeah, it
almost
was
a year's worth of
especially
rain
bad.
in one day.
I
last week.
was trapped in my apartment.
Yeah,
There's the phrase atmospheric river was tossed around quite a few times.
Yeah.
Like, that's not just a rainstorm.
No,
and then the earthquake too, man.
Oh my
Oh
god.
yeah, then we had an earthquake.
Super great. Anyway, so for our own safety, we did decide to call the show last week. We sent it out on social media. Sorry we didn't give you more notice, but it was for safety reasons, and it ended up being a very good call.
My street was a river.
Yeah, it was really bad. And by river, I mean like 3 feet deep, 4 feet, like literal rivers.
You have to know how bad the streets are in LA when people are not parking their cars there, because there's really good parking on my street, and so people aren't using it. That means there's a real problem.
Yeah, I mean, their car might be
Walked
floating away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, OrcCon is coming up this next weekend. So February 16th through the 19th at the LAX Hilton. We're going to do our live show Saturday night at 7:30. A bunch of us are going to be running games, both stuff that's on the schedule and in Games on Demand downstairs in the basement. Yeah, that's where they put the weird indie players down in the basement. But it actually is really nice and quieter down there, so we really appreciate it. And so, yeah, if you're heading down that way, if you're in the LA area, it's worth it. Come check it out. It's a great local con. And we are there 3 times a year. And I'll be running games, and
I would like to run games down there. You're like, that's where they cram the weird people in the base. And I'm like, didn't you just say I should run games on demand?
I mean, that's where I'm running games too. So
I'm literally picturing the TV show Severance and that like weird set of cubicles that are down there.
Oh,
with
sure.
a little, like, not totally inaccurate.
I'm gonna find my
Your game
weirdest
goes
game.
well, you get a waffle party.
Little pods of people just enjoying rolling their dice,
Yeah.
I'm
swinging
gonna-
their cards.
Yeah, I'm gonna find my weirdest game that isn't let these mermaids touch your dick, maybe. And we're gonna play that.
Yeah.
We're not playing that one, the mermaid game, though. It's bad.
No. All right. And also, game days. The next Happy Jacks game days is March 2nd. And there's already a bunch of games posted. Some of them are filled. I forgot to look it up before the show, but last time I looked, there were 6 games already. So well done. It's amazing. So yeah, join the Discord, happyjacks.org/Discord. Totally free. Go run games. Go play games. It's really a really amazing experience. And we do require safety tools. And it's just chef's kiss, amazing community. All right. It is a new month. We were supposed to do this last Friday, but like we said, we were treading water. So Indie Designer of the Month for February, I'm very excited, is Anna Landon. she, her. And you can find her work at annalandin.itch.io. And she also has a Patreon where you can go get all her games for $5 a month. And that's ANNALANDIN. And Anna is a queer Swedish illustrator, comic artist, and game designer. And she's the one that wears all the hats at Tea Witch Games. She's not actually a witch, but she definitely is sipping the tea right now, though.
Probably asleep.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
Her games on offer run the gamut from sweet and cozy to weird, sad, and spooky. Most of them are written for game jams and are intended for one-shot play, but there are bigger projects on the horizon. So, her games are stunningly beautiful, and I have already talked to her about doing art for one of my upcoming games because the illustrations she does are just amazing. The first game of hers that completely caught my eye is what we're talking about today. It's called Dust of the Traveled Road. Has, I think, maybe my favorite cover for any game I've ever seen ever. It's beautiful cover. Go look at it. Where it's these three adventurers. They're all cool, badass looking women. And then this beautiful, it's dust because they're traveling together, but just this beautiful kind of flowing art that flows behind them. It's just really pretty. Go look at it.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's right there. It's one of those things where you click on the page and your eyes boom, right there to it. And it's just I would like all of this, please. This picture is what I want to play right now.
This is the future liberals want.
Yeah, exactly.
I was gonna say this is the fuel for my next inebriation and itch.
Oh, it's so
Dangerous.
good. Yes. Anyway, so Dust of the Travel Road, you will take on one of three roles: the knight, the adept, or the magus, and set out from the dreaming city.
Sold.
And it, huh?
Sold.
So immediately.
I'm sold.
Oh, go! I thought you said soul. I'm like, did I do something wrong?
Sold. Nope.
Yes, no, 100%. The bizarre metropolis has been your home for some time, and to see the world beyond it together, you will, with your traveling companions, you will visit strange places, meet peculiar people, and gather dust, capitalized dust, of this world until you reach the journey's end. Your journey will change you, and in turn, you might change the world. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. Dust of the Traveled Road is a collaborative storytelling game for 2 to 4 players about venturing into the unknown, discovering new things, and letting your experiences change you. It is also a game about a small group of travelers on the road, going to stranger places, and the bonds you forge along the way. And it's amazing. It's so beautiful. And you can get it for $12 at annalandin.itch.io.
This is the danger of itch.
Yes.
Is they're like $12 and you're like, you know what that is? A little treat. And so if you're doing things around the house and you're like, oh, I just cleared out my entire closet. I deserve a little treat.
But why stop at 12? But you can get all her games for $5 a month.
Yeah.
I know, and that's the
I
problem.
know, right?
It sounds more
current
like an
and future
opportunity.
games. This
gonna
is what
say.
I'm saying.
I
Yeah,
have so
yeah.
many. I guess
What if I
had-
told you that today we can bring you? we
gonna
can get
be-
you in a 5K set.
It's just me at FedEx on Friday, just furiously photocopying games for Games on Demand. Like, all right, fuckers.
Yep.
And just like the timeshare speech that you would get, that's the 4 hours of your life that you.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Well, also,
Anyway.
the LX Hilton has a good business center with a really big, major copy printer. It's print.
Just me all right, let's work through my itch collection.
Yeah.
I'll do this.
It's actually an amazing concept. That'd be so cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not bad.
hold on.
But yeah, so Anna's art is stunning. Her games are fantastic and beautifully done. Go check it out. And we'll talk about more of them through this month. And I'm very, very excited to have her as our Indie Designer of the Month for February.
Nice.
All right, topic. And then I can stop talking for a few minutes. How do you feel about playing and running pre-written adventures? And does it depend on the system? Does it depend on the adventure? Do you like stuff that's put out by the companies only? Do you like stuff that's written by third-party creators? All the things. This can be a long topic, I feel like.
Yes, my answer is yes. Sorry, but I'm good.
I just had an
Like
existential crisis about this, so I'm good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, say your answer. and
Oh,
then
yeah,
I'll go
no,
for
no,
my
I
second.
have-
I'm gonna go. No, I'm kidding.
But anyway, no. I have I come from D&D, and so the majority of the games that I play are D&D, and so I have no problems with running pre-made modules. Oh wow, that is gorgeous.
Can we
Hold
just
on.
hold up the Dust of the Traveled Road art?
Oh my gosh.
And all of us just got hella distracted.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that's
it's really
amazing.
pretty.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
I was actively trying not to pull my phone out and look at it. When
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just did it.
Yeah,
I
did.
know it.
I just ruined it because I wanted to see it. We talked about it. I was like, I
Very
want to see
good.
the
That was
pretty art.
really great.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. Back to the topic.
No, no worries. I mean, I come from D&D, and not only that, but I come from the D&D Adventures League primarily, and so everything in Adventures League is a pre-written module. So it's really easy for D&D because there are a lot of not only first-party products, but really great quality third-party products that make running a module super easy.
Like what?
Oh, like the hardbound books for 5th edition, for example. Curse of Strahd is fantastic, well laid out. There's one called Tomb of Annihilation that's not without its problems, but overall, it's a fun module and it's got some really great encounters and interactions in there. There are some wonderful anthologies like Tales from the Radiant Citadel. That's a fantastic collection of adventures, and all of these are spectacularly written. They make it really easy to just pick up the book and kind of find the information that you need to kind of get going, right? But then there are also a variety of Adventures League modules, like published either by Wizards of the Coast or by independent writers who write their own modules for the Adventures League. Those are a little harder because there's not necessarily a whole lot of QC. And so
I'm sorry.
some...
What's QC?
Oh, quality control.
Oh, I see.
Sorry. So yeah, not all the
I
writers
legit was
write...
asking. I had no idea.
No worries. It's all right.
Could be anything.
Yeah, no, it could be a lot of things. It could be Queen's Cavaliers or something. But some adventure authors, like there's so much D&D material going on nowadays. The downside of that is that there are some folks who are kind of putting out material without really knowing what the best practices for writing are, and their modules can be a little harder to interpret.
Yeah.
But again, for 5th edition, a lot of support. There is no shortage either from the DMs Guild or from Itch or from third parties elsewhere. It's incredibly easy to run for that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I agree with you on a lot of all those points, and I think the D&D especially. I think just by virtue of being such a massively popular and well-known game, there's a wealth of material for it. And you mentioned some published, you mentioned some Wizards published stuff like Strahd and stuff like that. I was looking up a name, so I apologize. I was looking down for a second. There's a collection of anthologies called Uncaged that I really
yeah.
so good.
The Uncaged
Yeah.
anthologies are amazing.
Yeah, for those who are not in the know, which is not anybody in the room apparently, Uncaged are all written by women, non-binary people, and they basically are a series of anthologies that take actual like female-centric folklore, but make it like female forward. So it's like a lot of misunderstood monsters or a lot of villainized monsters are given kind of like a modern like or like more fleshed out, nuanced feminist spin on them.
One of our featured writers for a few design. Kimmy's looking it up now. One of our designers of the month was one of the writers of the Uncaged series.
Yeah. I can remember which month it was. So it was June. Jessica Markram was here, and she joined us in studio, and she was one of the authors for that.
I've had a really good time running those games for people.
Yeah.
I think the anthologies especially, or like the one-shot books, are great for people who like have a hard time getting together on a regular basis with people to play. It's a really good way of being like, okay, I know I have a game. If you're a DM, I know I have a game this weekend or in 2 weeks, and I don't really know what I want to do. It's so great to be able to crack open a book, whether it's like I've been running a couple of games for the most recent anthology that Wizards put out, which is Keys from the Golden Vault.
Oh,
and they're all
yes.
heist-based. And I literally had one day where my friends who I've been playing a lot of Baldur's Gate 3 with, one day I was like, hey, do you guys want to play just actual D&D? And they were like, yeah, because they haven't played in a while. And we just hopped on a call like an hour after I asked, and I was able to pull this book out and just like run a real quick adventure.
Yeah.
Obviously, typically you want to do more work than that, but it's nice to be able to do that. And what I would say to build on what you were saying is that, like, you're right, there are a lot that don't necessarily know best practices and are struggling. So I think that if you read some ahead of time, even if there are premises that you like, even if you're not someone who always wants to run pre-made stuff, I do think it can be great as a way of kind of like giving yourself kind of a cheat sheet towards preparing your own adventure, because you can still take what's published and printed and you can then take it and add your own things to it, or you can go, oh, this detail here fits really well with the character that my player is playing. I'm going to tie these two things together, and now you've kind of homebrewed up this. It's like taking like if you're homebrewing a cup of coffee, this is your creamer you're putting in, or vice versa. Like, I'm modifying the recipe a little bit, and I think that as someone who, the way that I tend to GM is by running off what the players are choosing to do and following that through. A lot of times I do like using a pre-written module to begin with, because it gives me the ability to like not spend a ton of time trying to prep a story that I might eventually kind of chuck out for what the players are following and like that the hero's doing anyway.
Yeah.
But it's like, cool, I have this basic framework that I can get back to, and I can focus instead on what is fun for me to do and what's fun for my group to do.
Yeah, I did not plan this. This sweatshirt I'm wearing was made for a one-shot we did from, like a pre-written one-shot for Vampire over at Queen's Court. I just went through this existential crisis where I was like, I want to learn how to run how to run Vampire specifically. World of Darkness has way too much lore for what it is.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, and it's all continuous.
Yeah.
That's why they tried to get rid of it at one point, but then
then
the
it didn't
audience
stick.
didn't be happy about that. So
So
I'll be on the next path now.
right. So the so like I was having I feel like I was raised with this idea, the former gifted kid thing of like, you can't run a game until you can write your own game, because your own adventure for it, because then you have a full understanding of the game. That's incredibly untrue. That is a not true thing. That is a lie.
Yeah.
That I have told myself. And it's like, no, pre-written work is the best way to, if you want to get into running games, learning how to just organize a campaign or like a game, and also like they've done the work for you, and then you get to do the heavy lifting of the secondary lifting of playing with your responding to how players act, because no plan survives contact with players.
Yeah.
But very specifically, my favorite for Vampire is we did dying fields out of. Oh shit! Aaron's in the chat. He knows what it's called. He can post it. But it's an anthology of scenarios to get your vampires out of the city. And I love me some Midwestern Gothic nonsense. So
As a Midwestern Gothic myself, I appreciate it.
welcome.
As a Columbus, Ohio vampire girl. As someone who literally larged vampire in Columbus, Ohio in public. Yeah.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
As someone who's played like a whole bunch of Vampire, like I'm something like picturing my character in the Midwest and how miserable that fucking venture would be.
No.
It's so fucking miserable. Like, I'm sorry, I only have 2 bars of service on myself. I cannot live like this.
Yeah, not to get full, like, let me tell you about my game.
Yeah.
This is my favorite character I've ever played so far. Let the Streets Run Red is what the anthology is called.
Okay.
Thank you, Aaron.
But wait. If we're in the middle, like, shouldn't it be like, let the dirt road run red? If
There
it's
are
like,
streets in flyover
wow.
states, I assume.
Yeah.
I just feel like
we
that's
have pavements.
I know, but that's not like evocative of like what it's like. Get your vampires out of it. Like
Come on down to our vampire game, Blood in the Corn.
Blood in the Corn.
Blood in the
Blood
corn.
in the Corn sounds like a Stephen King book.
That
Perfect.
is a Stephen
Yeah,
King
yeah.
novel. But yeah, not to get fully like, let me tell you about my game. But my favorite Toreador I've ever played was a Americana kitsch loving Toreador.
Oh, I love it
which
so
is
much.
why this, hold on, here we go. Here
What does it say?
it says kick today in the face, which if you're a fair person is funny.
Yeah.
And then the pony literally has the Queen's Court symbol on
Oh,
the
that's
butt.
so cute.
I shouldn't be allowed to make my own clothing anymore. But yeah, wonders what an iron-on will do. Anyway, long story short.
I'm just now caught up on the idea of a bunch of like just like shit kicker vampires. Like, well, damn, it looks like we got ourselves a Sabat.
We did it.
obsessed with this idea.
I'm
so
obsessed with
know
it.
it, Western. Yeah. Oh, wait.
They're
Nobody I
hang-
know would talk like that. I just think I didn't. I'm from Ohio. This is how I've talked my whole life. I don't know why I suddenly made the person very. Hey, y'all.
Yeah.
I'd absolutely go country with it and just talk like this and then start like channeling my Oklahoma roots right there and then just like
I need Noah Hawley to do a whole season of Fargo that has vampires in it.
I want
wow.
Vampire Fargo more than I want
Yeah,
anything
perfect.
else right now.
Yeah. Well,
Aaron,
yeah,
I know you're in the chat. Make it happen.
You know, the prince has definitely told us that we gotta be a little more careful when we're out there. Okay, so by the way,
cry.
if you already don't love Fargo, if you just listen to Juno Temple talk in that accent for the entire most recent season of Fargo, I don't know what to tell you because it's the most amazing thing in the world.
Oh my god, I love it so much.
Picturing like instead of hanging out outside the gas station, convenience store or something, they're just hanging out outside the emergency room door. Anyway,
Yeah. Oh, it's so great.
So good.
It's amazing.
So specific and so good. Anyway, yeah.
It took me a second, and I got what you were saying, and I
Yeah.
really appreciated it.
What's your favorite format for adventures?
How do you mean?
There's a bunch of different design choices. There's kind of the choose your own adventure. You do this, and then if they do this, turn to this page, and or there's ones where there's literally just one answer, and then there's they can do this, this, or this to get to the next step. What do you prefer? What's your flavor of choice?
I kind of like it where it's more it's hard to write this in a good way for me as a writer, so I like it when people can do it well in a book. I like it where it's kind of here's all that's happening in a given time frame, and just know what's happening, and then let the players kind of roam and figure things. And if they go to this room, what's happening in this room. That's speaking of, I mentioned Golden Vault. That's because it's a heist. There's a lot of that. You're in this museum.
Yeah.
So here's what's happening in these rooms in this museum. And here's what these guards are doing when you're in there. Because that tends to be how I GM anyway. Which is kind of I always have to imagine when I'm creating my story out of whole cloth. I like to imagine what would happen if the characters never arrived, and that's all I've got. And then once they arrive, everything changes. So when someone has basically given me, for lack of a better term, a board they've set up, and here's where everything is on the board, have fun with it. That's kind of how I like it.
I love that the One Ring adventures are written some of them. About the book I was using when I was running the campaign for us is written that way. They call it their landmark system. So it's here's the map, and then here's all these different places, and then your players can kind of choose as they journey around the map. Then you're okay, this is an adventure that could be here if they're ending up there, and then if they're busy on a quest, you can kind of ignore it or come back to it later. But I loved that same thing. I loved the freedom it gave me, and it just gave me hints and ideas. And sometimes I'd just take them whole cloth, and a lot of times I would then just tweak them or make them our own and stuff like that. But I loved that. And I'd never seen that kind of design before. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's sort of like a little mini guided sandbox.
Yeah, exactly.
You have a sandbox with all the tools in there, and as a GM, you're usually given guidance how to use the tools in the book to challenge your players and create interesting scenarios.
I did find that what's it called? Rime of the Frost Maiden kind of works like that.
Yeah.
And is wildly unplayable in a lot of ways because of the sandbox nature of it. Things become like a real sandbox game, video game. You can wander into a zone that is too
that's a little
hard.
above your punching weight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do I used to subscribe to Dungeon in a Box, and you'd get the little adventures, which our friend of the show, our very own Jameson wrote a couple adventures for, and still has written one of my favorite to run. But the whole those are really nice. If you can fit it on a pamphlet, basically, I think is as much as you need for an adventure.
Yeah.
Here are your major players. Anyone else you make up's good for you. Here's your skeleton. Everything else, you flesh everything out. But here's your basic plot. Here's the orc. Here's why he wants his pie.
Yeah.
And
I do as a GM, I do like that kind of concept. Sometimes when it's basically, if you're using so we talked about sandbox, if we're using railroading as a concept, I like it when it's here's the railroad map. here's what the rails do.
Yes.
And then you as a GM can bring everything else to the table that you want to bring, so that it doesn't feel like they're on a railroad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it? Waterdeep Dragon Heist was similar to that. You get this sort of loose skeleton of events, and then the beauty of that module, right? One thing I love about that is that there are a variety of events that happen in the game, but depending on when you tackle, depending on the season, it's all based on seasons, right? So if you tackle in the spring, summer, autumn, winter, those events, they generally remain the same, but they slot into that railroad in different ways.
And you can choose who the villain is, too, which also
Yeah,
changes
yeah,
things.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite modules, or my
That's a
favorite
really good one.
adventures for 5th edition as well.
Yeah.
Clara, kind of circling back to something you mentioned, that's one of the caveats for running published adventures is that if you're running for, folks that maybe you're not necessarily, if you're running online and you're just gathering players from various places and they're very well versed on the lore and you're not,
Oh,
that can be a little harrowing
Yes.
sometimes. And so, you mentioned Vampire the Masquerade, just rich woven tapestry, right? And if you're kind of just getting started and, you get players that really know it well, it can be a little intimidating.
yeah.
I feel that way for 5th edition sometimes. I like the Forgotten Realms, but I don't know it intimately as a lot of people who've been
Yeah.
I actually find that I tend to not run games in the Forgotten Realms because of that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's not just 5th edition, but previous editions, there is sort of this idea of like people who have read all the Salvatore books and stuff like that, and they're like, those are Forgotten Realms, right? I
Yeah,
think they are.
yeah.
But I think someone's like, yeah, of course they are. Yeah. But it's like, I don't know all the lore of Drizzt. Like I don't know that kind of, so it's like, I don't want to have to get into that. And I will say that weirdly enough, I find that a lot of times I'll take a module published in the Forgotten Realms and I'll move it to a different setting when I'm running it for that reason. And weirdly, which is this feels so paradoxical because if I'm saying that I don't want to get too much into the lore, it's weird that I'm going to say a thing that is literally based on another show that has a lore to it. But the Exandria setting that they built for Critical Role, all of the source books they've put out for that, they put one out officially through D&D, which is the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. They put out one independently that they've partnered with D&D Beyond, so we still have it, even though Wizards didn't publish it. But that's all the stuff that's on Taldore.
Yeah, the Taldore book, yeah.
I can visualize that world so much better based on those 2 books than I can all the books there are for the Forgotten Realms. And when I run the Forgotten Realms, I almost have to always go, my Forgotten Realms is not your Forgotten Realms. My Forgotten Realms is 2 or 3 mirrors away from yours. So don't think that just because you know something is part of this world's lore that it's going to be in mine, because I might not have known that thing, because I have gotten into parts with players before where someone will start pulling up artwork from a book that we're not even using, and I'm like, that's not part of this right now.
Yeah, I feel like that's part of any canon that's been around that long, though. I feel like if you have 3 books out and they've been meticulously created by the same group of creative people, making sure everything is it's streamlined. Where Forgotten Realms, literally, I remember as a child looking at a bunch of novels on the shelf, and then years later picking up D&D and being like, oh wait, I think these are books, aren't they?
Yeah.
And there's been so many authors and so many different company runners and so many different everythings. At some point, it's sort of like the Star Wars canon or anything else where it starts getting wait, I thought this works this way, and then it's so I don't know. It's so hard when IPs or worlds become that massive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to say, too. We're talking a lot about 5th edition because it's the biggest game in town, I suppose. But,
up until this year, it's the current edition of the game. So
yeah, right,
not
yeah.
to be anymore, but...
you think about IPs like Star Wars, Star Trek, hugely popular game. And even the new Marvel multiverse role-playing game, if you're a new player or a new game master kind of running those games and you end up with somebody who's like, oh, wait a minute, I have everything that you could possibly imagine for that particular IP, all of a sudden it's a little bit, there's a little bit of intimidation. Well, it gets a little bit...
You mean...
The stakes get high.
You mean running One Ring with Kai at the table?
Yeah.
I could not run one ring with you and Kai at the table because I'd be like, yeah, the wizard guys, and you're like, they're angels, and I'm like, okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The one thing that's nice about running Doctor Who for so long is that Doctor Who as a TV show doesn't follow its own canon, so people can't get mad at you at the table for not being in canon because you're like, the show's not in canon.
No,
what are you talking about?
No.
Yeah. And so it was very funny because we were running a Doctor Who show for an audience, and then the show would do things that would make it hard for us to make... we would always try to adapt our canon to what the show was doing a little bit, because we're supposed to be technically in the future from the show. But sometimes we're like, no, we're not doing it that way. We want Gallifrey to exist still, so we're making Gallifrey exist still and stuff like that. But it is very funny in that way.
I have 2 very spicy, I realized, takes, and now I've forgotten one because of ADHD. The second one is if you are a person who wants to get into running games for a TV, for consumption, actual play style, pre-written content's a really good way to understand how to keep a game on rails that are cohesive enough to listen to game after game after game versus, in my opinion, this is all my opinion, versus like,
I came here for your facts.
all right, well, I got nothing. I actually, no, I do. I can tell
This
you
is
like,
Happy Jack's fact show.
as a
Thank you very
person,
much.
as a person who's worked on a couple of streaming shows, no, I know.
So you can give your real answer.
I'll give my credentials at least. Here's my dick. As a person who has worked on a couple and worked with a couple of streaming shows, I do find the ones that I find that are a little more like a little less meandering, and a little more cohesive, tends to run their games, have an idea of where their games are going and stuff, and their notes tend to look like pre-written adventures. And so if you're the kind of person who wants to get into streaming actual play, I think a really good idea is looking at pre-written adventures, if only so that like where your story is kind of going. Again, no plan survives contact with players, but if you it means that you can prep things like battle maps. It means you can prep things like characters and like minis or whatever you're going to do. If you look at the credits on Critical Role's stuff or Dimension 20 stuff, there are so many writers being credited. That is not because there's someone that is not because the dice are pre-scripted.
No.
It is because they're basically writing out pre-written campaigns and the players are running through them.
Yeah.
And I think people forget that when we talk about running. I mean, it also
And they're also helping people. They're also designing worlds together. Like how do you build up they're especially currently with Critical Role they're actively because they don't want to be just white people writing a world that's very set and
Absolutely.
stuff. So they're actively so yeah, it's
Oh, I remember my second spicy take.
so that's why having a book that gives you a setting is a really good way to get into things quicker and not feel like you have to build an entire world from scratch.
Yeah. I will say my second spicy take is nobody plays D&D for Forgotten Realms. I've never met a single person who played D&D and was like, let me tell you about my Forgotten Realms campaign. The first thing that comes out of their mouth is always, the first thing that comes out of anyone who plays D&D's mouth, to me at least, is let me tell you about my homebrew. I'm like, rad, love history.
Yeah.
Didn't used to be that way.
I think people still do play Forgotten Realms, but only as a way of quickly getting into terms. It's easy to toss. I think a great example of it is the Adventure Zone technically is Forgotten Realms. It's set in the balance or campaign anyway. It's set in Faerun, but that's because they started off with literally Lost Mine and Phandelver until they found their own story and went off of it. So when they need a big city, they'll quickly toss in Neverwinter or whatever. But then when they want a city that's a weird gulch town, they'll make one up. It doesn't have you can, even if you're using the Forgotten Realms, you can make up a city that doesn't exist in the Forgotten Realms. And guess what? That's what happens in published D&D books. It's suddenly you're in a city that never has had a spot on the map. Phandalin was not a city in the Forgotten Realms until Lost Mine of Phandelver.
Yeah. It's canon now,
No, I
bitch.
think about that, but I think I read about that. Yeah.
Which is the joy of kind of writing in a setting too, is that you get to expand the world. One thing that I will add is that I actually find it really entertaining to watch people run adventures that I'm familiar with because it's an interesting. It's always different, and it's an interesting take on an adventure. You can't do that with a movie. You can't just say make the usual suspects, right, and have your imprint on it, right? So, but you can play Curse of Strahd, and oh boy, they're all clowns trudging through Barovia, whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
By the way, Strahd, a great example of a non-Forgotten Realm setting because it's literally in Ravenloft.
Yeah. This is
Oh
true.
man, those are different places.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Different plane of existence.
The thing about that too is that after a certain point, a wildly popular or more established realm does give you a good source of tropes.
Yeah.
And so when you say Neverwinter, when you say what's it called, Baldur's Gate, especially Baldur's Gate now,
Ooh, yeah.
that's kind of a great shorthand for knowing. You tell that to a player and they're like, oh, okay, I know, I get it. I get it,
Yeah, I think of Waterdeep as kind of Neverwinter as a resplendent city.
Sure,
whereas,
yeah.
Waterdeep I feel is a little more murky.
A little
I feel
seedier, yeah.
Neverwinter is fantasy New York.
Yeah.
Or fantasy Chicago, whereas
Yeah.
Waterdeep is fantasy Seattle, or it's a little bit more
You and I have very different experiences with
I
New
know,
York
yeah. I was
Seattle.
gonna say, aw.
And
Flip it,
Chicago.
reverse
Yeah,
it,
Chicago.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Here's what I'll say. A better example of it. It's Neverwinter is Metropolis, and Waterdeep
There
is
we go.
Gotham.
Yes,
Gotham, yeah,
absolutely. I was like, Waterdeep is awful.
And again, we're talking about a lot of D&D.
Seattle's not awful. I love Seattle.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, it's a beautiful city. I love that place.
Me too. I'm a big
We're talking
tactical
a lot about
person.
D&D. One thing that I will say too is that it is useful for fledgling dungeon masters to have such a wealth of material, right?
Yeah.
It's a little harder for other games sometimes, like smaller indie games, to get that kind of support. And so more often a GM might have to create more material. I was gonna say the Alien RPG, but there is quite a bit of like literary material from the past to plumb for that. But there aren't a whole lot of modules for that one, for example. So as a DM, you're probably gonna be running you're gonna be making up your own scenarios.
Yeah.
Unlike, say, the benefit of, say, a D&D module is even if you don't plan on running it, they're great sources of inspiration. Like, you could look at a page and say, oh, that encounter sounds really interesting. I'm going to take those set of monsters, and you can take nothing else, you know?
Yeah.
I will say, if you are trying to GM, we did talk about D&D a lot. If you're a GM trying to run a non-D&D game, off the top of my head, I don't have one to pull for you, but I know that a lot of them exist and I have used them. There are a lot of what they call system agnostic modules, where instead of really focusing on the rules, it kind of just tells you like what's going to happen from story beat to story beat, and then you kind of bring in the mechanics from the game you're playing to do that. And I think it's good to look at a few of those, but ultimately if you do a few of those, you can kind of do that yourself with modules created for other games and just do a little bit of work yourself to go, okay, like so if you say you're running Monster of the Week and you've got, this is a wild example because it wouldn't be Monster of the Week at this point, but let's say you have Monster of the Week and then you've got Curse of Strahd. You could treat Curse of Strahd like a Monster of the Week monster hunt and just take out all the stats and just make Strahd the monster you're building towards. Like, that's a bad example because it's like a campaign versus a one, you know what I mean? But it's possible. Did I step on your toes? Are you doing
No,
that?
I'm gonna do it.
You should do it. Yeah.
I want to do it now. That's terrible, and I love
Yeah.
Monster of the Week.
Yeah, you could. I think you could easily do that, and I think that's a great example of like. 'Cause I mean, what is Curse of Strahd if not just a really long, drawn-out series of how to kill this monster?
Yeah.
And that's what Monster of the Week is. You could easily make it like,
Yeah.
So that's kind of a thing that I think, like, even though there might not be as much of a wealth, there's more D&D books than any other game out there because it's like being like, oh, there's more Coke at the store than there is like how you can get more Coca-Cola than you can any other local brand than Jones Soda. Wow, what a shocker!
Wild.
But, yeah.
See, I want to run Curse of Strahd in Vampire.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
interesting.
I think Ryan Omega was talking about doing that at one point.
No, Ryan Omega was thinking about doing. I'm gonna beat him to it. Fucking wild. No, maybe this is just a unique thing. Speaking of, oh no,
I will be
hold
Prince.
on, we need to table this conversation so we can talk about that
Now
one.
you're playing Camarilla assassins who have been sent in to take down this Anarch Prince Strahd who is trying to turn.
Oh, okay,
Folks that
hold
are
on.
reckoning, yeah, Rose has got a whole other separate point.
Yeah, Rose.
Or it could be a
Rose said
it could be a
one-
Werewolf
Yeah.
the Apocalypse game, and your guru trying to take.
We have
You
to-
could do it.
If we bring up the chat, we've got to read what it says
Yeah.
for
That's
people.
true.
So Rose said, wouldn't Strahd be a hunter in the Reckoning game?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be a World of Darkness, and you could do the nasty thing
You
where you
could.
put them all together. Which don't do that. It's a nasty idea.
Oh, those mechanics do not play well together.
You put a mage in the thing, and it's like, I'll see. I'll see
Mage
what they
breaks
do.
everything.
Mage breaks everything.
Every mage breaks everything. It's
I
just,
know.
It breaks it.
Shit, what was I gonna say before I got so distracted by this? This may be a side effect of, again, my habit of inebriated itching, which I need a better name for that. Because that came out bad.
That's perfect.
That came out bad.
It's 10 out of 10. No.
Chef's
Yeah,
kiss.
yeah,
You cannot
you-
get better.
Yeah, you take your thing of choice, whether it is
Now it's
illegal.
getting worse.
No, yeah, you're right. Hold on.
Dritching. No.
Dritching. Well, because marijuana's legal here.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, you're right.
Cold medicine when I had COVID and could only just be on my computer.
Yeah.
Anyway, I know that like in the Kickstarter for I don't know, Demigods and maybe Avatar, the Avatar game, one of those things like pre-written campaigns were part of the stretch goals. So I know a bunch of indie games that have these pre-written games. Demigods, for some reason, is the only one that comes to mind. But I know that we have a couple indie authors who do that. So they are there if you are looking for them. And not to say all PBTAs are interchangeable, but maybe a good framework to look at one at a pre-written for
Yeah.
Oh, Monster of the Week has plenty as well.
Yeah.
And so does like Kids on Brooms.
Yeah.
Monster of the Week, I think, just came out like last year with a whole book of pre-written hunts.
Among other things, yes.
Well, and all of Free League's games all
League's
have
games
tons
are
of
super
stuff.
well
Yeah,
supported.
so
Yeah.
their Alien game that just came out, Coriolis, Tales from the Loop and Tales from the Flood. I'm like, what's the really big one? You said
Yeah.
Kids on Bikes, and I was like, it's not Kids on Bikes. It's not Kids on Bikes. What is it? Yeah.
Kids on Brooms.
Yeah, Kids on Brooms also, yes. Which I wrote some of the stuff for that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I wrote some
No
of this.
kidding.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's very fun.
I didn't realize that.
Would you call Hunters Entertainment indie at this point still?
Yeah, but I don't think like mentioning the titles that we have, they're not really indie.
Yeah, I will
They're
say.
some of the bigger like.
They are
you know-
the big of the littles.
Yeah, exactly.
I was gonna say, like, again, if you're on itch.io and
They're
you're
the
like,
RC Cola to the Coca-Cola.
in the Coca-Cola analogy, they are.
I have a very-
Pathfinder's
They're
Pepsi.
the
Oh.
yeah.
I have a very random, like, you're okay.
Pepsi Finder. Oh god.
You have Diet Coke, no, we have Starfinder.
So I have a very random way of deciding what's indie and what's not indie. If the company is making a living off, like if the people there don't have day jobs,
That's fair.
that's my thing. I'm like, you're indie. If you have to have a day job while you're running your TTRPG company, you're indie.
Yeah, you're,
I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah.
At least a
Because
side hustle
like
or something like that.
I think you can be indie and be full time. I think it just means it depends on where you're getting your money from. Like
Oh, yeah.
I think where Hunters could maybe be. This is wow, we're on down a different rabbit hole now entirely. By the way, I realize my Starfinder Diet Coke analogy is not very good because Starfinder has more crunch than regular. It's like
Yeah.
smooth peanut butter. Anyway,
Yeah, that's a
I
peanut
think
butter
that the
reference.
reason, what makes you stop being indie, in my opinion, is that if you are literally publishing brand name, like if you're publishing Werewolf the Apocalypse, you really can't say you're an indie anymore because you're literally publishing a White Wolf game. Like
No, but
that's what I'm saying. Like,
but it's actually super easy to get IPs.
That is
Like,
true.
Yeah.
If you
yeah.
like, if you,
depends on the IP. But I'm
yes,
saying
okay.
saying you're
if you get
publishing
Star
a-
Wars, I can say okay, you're not indie probably.
Well, yeah, I'm saying if you can raise the money for a license, sure. But the difference between, like, I would say White Wolf Games, which is not even owned by White Wolf anymore, but like those were big names
Yes.
in RPGs. So
Yeah.
it's like you've bought, like if you are being marketed with like brand names that are brand names within the industry, that's hard to be like you're still indie, but maybe still.
The problem with that is like they're not necessarily buying the IP. You can do like a profit sharing thing where you're like, hey, I'll publish this game if you let me do that. You don't have to
Yeah.
do anything,
That's
and
true.
you'll get 40% of the profits.
Right.
So inside
So-
baseball.
Well, the reason why I think like
This is our
still,
Super Bowl talk.
the reason why I'm still not sure if I count that as
Sorry,
yeah,
interrupted you.
I know what you're saying about the like job
Yeah.
thing, but it's like the reason why I wouldn't think of like D&D for example as indies because it's owned by Hasbro. Like I think that like
Yeah.
I think that if the people who started your company still own the company and someone is in the comment, do you own your own IP? Like I think it's hard for me to say that somebody is an indie completely if they're using, even though IP is easy to access, you're still beholden to a corporate like overlord to permit things. A great example is, for example, like I don't know how actually. The thing I was going to say, I'm not sure is public knowledge, so I
Okay,
can't
okay.
say.
I was gonna say, I have a really mean metric for it. Is like, will the head of your company talk to me? That is like, will the head of your
yeah.
company respond to my email? Is
Yeah.
my like, are you an indie? I feel like that sounds really really shitty when I say it up front, but I will. It's more of a like when we talk indie versus like big brand name publisher. I am not walking up to the CEO of Dungeons and Dragons for Hasbro
Yeah.
and being like, "Hey, I'm representing Happy Jacks." Wild.
Well,
a lot of
that's a good example
audacity.
because there's so many levels of who that would be.
Exactly.
But I still do think that you can be. I think you can be a very big, successful indie company. Like same with like a music label. Like I think that like you can be a record label that is entirely funded by like your sales or like fundraising and stuff like that, and not by like venture capitalists investing in
For
your building or like having corporations own a stake in your company. That's where I think like for example, like Larian Games is owned by like other companies own a stake in Larian Games. So you couldn't say like Larian's like an indie developer because they're literally but like, and I think this is so not what we're talking
yeah,
about.
it's okay.
Wrap up.
I went-
But like in movies, for example, like there was a lot of like in the '90s especially independent movie studios that then got bought out by corporations and stuff like that. And so like it's hard to be like that's still an indie because those people aren't always like working full. It's like that's because they now have a parent
Yeah.
company.
It's about. I guess it more depends on like why are you asking if they're an indie company. I'm gonna go, but like, and I guess because one of the follow up kind of questions on our thing is like, is there hope for indie?
No, we haven't read that email
Oh.
yet. We haven't.
I'm so
even
sorry.
gotten there.
Spoilers.
Prying into the
Oh, yeah,
future.
we can wrap
Maybe let's pause.
We'll pause. We'll
Because
read
we're
it.
going to circle back to this in a minute, I think. So I also am sorry about the bad joke that got us way off topic. I was thinking because when I did my writing for Hunters, both of them, the main people at Hunters at the time had day jobs, and one of them was a teacher. So he and I would joke about like because we could only meet like after school when we were doing our planning.
Well,
So-
I was gonna say the last thing I'll say on it is like it's a question about like, whether you're a pro or not, and when people are like, "Well, you were a professional mermaid," I was like, "Yes, I did make money being a mermaid. Boy, was it not my primary job."
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me, yeah. All right, mailbag number 1. I'm not reading it. Who wants to read it?
I'll do it. I talked a lot, so I'll take the penance for having talked so much.
We appreciate it.
Yeah,
We
since
appreciate
I really dived into that deep.
it. It was good. though.
It's so
good.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I think I have an example for you, but we're not going to get into that
Oh
now.
my god.
We're going to wait till the end of this email when it's talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Put a pin in it.
Howdy ho there, Jackarinos. I have been diving deep into my world building from my home D&D 5e. Sorry, the Heidi ho put me in a voice.
It actually
Where I'm at.
says Heidi Ho there, Jack.
Yeah.
That's it was asking for that.
Better than the voice I would have done.
I just want to let you all know I would not have said that myself. This is 100% like
Putting words in Riley's mouth.
I am not. I mean, look, unless Pee Wee Herman is asking me to do it for a HBO special, I'm not just dropping in with a Heidi ho. All right, sorry. Some time ago, friends who saw me working on it told... I'm going to start this sentence over because I cut off in the middle of it. I have been diving deep into my world building for my home D&D 5e game. Some time ago, friends who saw me working on it told me I should write a book. That is based on the amount of content I was writing, not because of railroading. That's a fair point. I considered it for a while and started planning stories, but I read a lot more RPG content and have been considering writing adventure modules instead. Since at least a few of you are now game designers, I wanted to get your opinions on the plan/idea I have. I don't know the proper amount of details to include, but here it goes. My question follows the following summary of my plan. Summary number 1. Pick a location in my world that is already fleshed out and write an adventure within it. Playtest it and apply feedback. Release on DM's Guild for free. Start writing second adventure in the same world. Wait and see what happens. Read feedback. Apply feedback to second adventure and playtest. Release second adventure as either free or pay what you want. Rinse, repeat, and maybe publish my own campaign setting. And I'm Riley's interjection is I'm fighting so hard not to go. Question mark, profit?
The answer's no.
Plan is to test the waters for... Well, yeah, if you're giving it for free, you're not going to profit off it. Shark Tank News. Breaking news. Free stuff does not pay. See, you're making points that I want to talk about in this chat. Okay, the plan is to test the waters, both for my creations, and for myself, to see if I can share my world with more people and see if I enjoy writing in a gaming style. It would be a dream to publish a campaign setting and actually have it sell, but I have no name recognition. In this environment of podcasts and actual plays, is it feasible for an individual creator to build a name off of adventure or module writing enough to successfully make that work? Looking forward to your insight and discussion. Mike, aka Mystic Stream on the Discord.
Before we start, I need to say one very important thing, and that is, at this very moment, if you are not watching the video, Jay has been taking notes to answer this question, like a kid who did his homework in this class, in this lecture hall. I am not. I'm gonna wait till everyone comes up with an answer, and then I will piggyback off of that.
I read the question and I have less notes on it than Jay does.
Yeah, Jay did notes.
But I mean, also, like, I have not published a game, so I also feel
That's
like I'm
also
going to be a
part of
little
it.
bit. Yeah, I might get a drink.
Why do
while
you think
guys
I
start
put this
talking.
email in while you...
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't do the reading. So
Yeah, this is sort of my world. This is kind of the writing that I do a lot of, actually. And so a couple of things. First of all, don't sell your work short. So if you're going to create something and publish it, at least put it in for pay what you can. Don't just say, I'm just giving this away
Yeah.
for free. If people appreciate it, they will kick a few bucks over your way. And boy, there's nothing better than waking up in the morning and saying, oh, somebody cared enough.
Oh, that is the best feeling.
Right? This is what, yeah, absolutely.
I think also, and like just adding to that, I don't want to cut you off,
No.
but there's actually studies that show if you're giving something away for free, customers will value it less.
Yeah.
There's a psychological thing where if you're asking pay what you can or pay what you will, Like they will like your work more because of the psychological mind game of, oh, okay, I'll give it $1 rather than just having it for free.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they will actually give
absolutely.
it higher reviews. They will speak more highly of it just because you did that one thing, which is
Yeah.
really weird.
Yeah. And if you find that the numbers do look good for you, you're getting a few sales each week, honestly, put it up for like 99 cents. You know, $1.99. That's a pretty reasonable, actually, per the Adventures League model. Like $2.99 is a pretty good price point for an adventure. I personally, wouldn't hesitate to buy an adventure for $3 because that's a lot of prep that's already been made, kind of like what we talked about before, that I don't have to do, and possible inspiration that'll launch a lot of other things.
As a person who, yes, buys a lot of games that are $2.99, absolute.
Yeah.
The 99 means it's not a whole dollar, and that's
Yeah.
cheaper.
Yeah.
And for some reason, that's a steal.
I also believe, and I might be wrong on this, I don't know the breakdowns of DM's Guild or Drive-Thru, but I think that a lot of times if you make it $2.99, you actually get more than you would if you made it 99 cents because of like the more you charge it for, the bigger percentage you get of it. So it's actually better for you financially. Even if you sell less, you might make more money off of it than if you didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This is very true.
I know you're not looking for profits at this point. You're looking for audiences to buy it.
Yeah.
But I think like look at the incentives, look what their breakdowns are for how much you charge for, and that's why $2.99 is a pretty magic number because I think that's like where you get to the next level of incentives.
Oh, you have a cup of Pathfinder or D&D in there?
Yes. I have some D&D with the Mai Tai.
Yeah.
Sorry. So sorry.
I would also, I would suggest not, like, I think $2.99 is a great price point. If you want to do it for free, do it in, like, splurges. Like, hey, free for the first week.
Yes,
exactly. And then there's like that demand. That's going to be the difference of someone being like, oh, maybe I'll come back and buy that later. Or no, I'm going to buy it right now because if I don't, it's not going to be free next week. And then you build up that demand. Hopefully some of them leave some reviews. And then the people who see those reviews later don't realize that those people paid nothing. And then they will pay that $2.99 or whatever it is. If your adventure or your product is like themed around something, like having it be, if it's a Christmas, speaking of Christmas episodes, like if it's a Christmas themed adventure, then having like it free.
Off mic, this is a heads up.
No spoilers.
Yes. Sorry.
That's right. I don't mind it. Just the audience doesn't know what we're talking
doesn't
about.
know what we're talking about. That's true. That's what happens when we're friends and we talk before and then we keep talking and then start.
For the
streaming.
audience at home, real quickly, I ran through all my plans for my Christmas themed Doctor Who story game that I'm running this Saturday.
While we're sitting here waiting to start. Anyway, so yeah, good. Now that you're in the know, so if you have a theme to it, then like having it be free, like 2 weeks, like the 2 weeks after, the first week of December or something like that. Sorry, please continue.
No worries.
Okay.
So a couple of things. Well, first of all, thanks for writing in. I appreciate the question, certainly. The plan sounds really solid, at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
It's great that you're open to, accepting so much feedback and
Playtesting.
Yeah. Playtesting. Even I don't playtest my stuff as nearly as often as I should. But I think I would recommend, if you want to gauge interest and if you want to get people's attention, run them out in public. So go to a game store. If there are cons nearby, sign up to run your material at a con and get your material out there. Yeah.
Start a mailing list.
Yeah. And if you ever have any questions about like what you should include or like how the material should be laid out, my best advice is read as many other published adventures as you can.
Yeah.
Because that's where I kind of got all my experience. Like when I wrote my first published module, I hadn't written anything longer than a page. And the next thing you know, I've got adventures on the DM's Guild and for Wizards of the Coast and stuff. So,
Would you also say, you mentioned read other modules, would you recommend writing, playing some other modules that are similar to kind of like the level you're thinking of writing wise?
Yeah.
You get an idea of like, oh, this is actually really hard to run, so maybe I should make sure that when I write mine, it's also not as hard to run.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, every adventure that you read is a learning experience in my book, and it's a learning experience as to what you should include or how you could lay out your information, and sometimes it's like how you shouldn't really, honestly,
Oh my goodness. Sorry, I've just
No,
so
go
many
for it.
thoughts on
Darn.
I saw that.
Why
Let's
there's
do
so
it.
many vampires around here?
back to that. No, but like even for little things like formatting your modules, I can look at one very, very popular system that has just horrendously laid out books that are impossible to use unless you can literally search for diablerie in the book, naming no names.
So
But
bad. They're so
I
bad.
can't imagine what that means.
Yeah, tell us what that game is without talking.
Traveler.
also Traveler, hold on.
Yeah.
Oh wait, sorry.
But yeah, I've
Novel loves
seen.
a searchable PDF.
I have seen and formatted really poorly formatted games. I have done that myself. So you can find just the little like. Oh my God, studying actually helps you on the test. Like doing the work ahead of time, reading the modules, getting a bunch of modules under your belt just to know what feels good and what looks good and what information works for you. If I ever publish a game instead of threatening to publish games, I'm going to be the kind of person who has like a thick glossary in the front and just maybe pull tabs. It'll be a pop-up book of like what terms mean because I'm so fucking sick
That
of
sounds
everything.
amazing. That's awesome.
Oh man.
I love that idea so much.
Yeah.
All
that's
right,
pop-up
your
book.
production costs.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Actually, you'd be surprised. Pop-up books and kids' books are fairly cheap. It's so annoying. So much cheaper than like box stuff. Sorry.
Oh, huh.
It's stabbed me in the heart with all the things I've been thinking about for the last couple weeks.
Oh no, I just love pop-up books.
Yeah.
But for like even like a tear this page out and this is the one sheet you're gonna need to like give to your players. Oh my God. Rose, why are we the same person?
Rose just told for the podcast listeners, Rose just wanted that thick glossary as my burlesque name.
Oh,
Spelled THICC, of course.
Kimmy and I
THICC.
both looked down and broke at the exact
Died.
same time.
that was
But
awesome.
yeah, like you do the work, do the legwork of like looking at other
Yeah.
people's stuff.
Yeah.
That's an advice for writing across the
Everything.
board. You
Yeah.
cannot be a writer without being a reader.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
impossible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can't write
Absolutely.
movies without watching movies. You can't write books without reading books.
Yeah.
It's not even like it's almost like I think Chuck Wendig mentioned it in his recent book about on writing where it was like gentle advice for writers. He's like I don't even think telling writers to read is writing advice at this point because if you're writing and you're not reading, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
How
yeah.
you do
Yeah, it's
that?
a really good. Yeah, good way to put it.
So this is something that I've been working on a lot as far as like building audience and things like this. I haven't really talked about it, but I got accepted to like this mentorship program with
Ooh.
Gamma. So I've been working on this for like the last 6 months, working with people at a bunch of different game companies, doing like weekly seminars where they're trying to help like new marginalized like game publishers and retailers. And I feel weird talking about it.
really
It's
cool.
very cool and it's really stressful and it's exhausting and really great. It's like, hey, all the things I wanted to know, except here's a fire hose of just here's all the information, write this all down as fast as you can. Oh, and Gamma's in 2 weeks, and here's a booth, and do it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's fine. But the biggest things you want to do is you want to absolutely all the reading that Jay just said. You want to find ways to brand your things. So have find a layout format that you really like and that you can recreate so that people pick up your game and recognize it. So whether it's a heading that's different, maybe you have scratchy looking corners on all of your adventures that you release. And then for heaven's sake, have a logo that is there and identifiable and not just a D20. I say that with a podcast that our logo's just a D20, but
So done.
yeah, so it's like very done. So like have these identifiers so people see it on the table and then can like, oh, that's this, and so that when they see it somewhere else, they recognize it because you want something that will be a visual indicator that it's yours.
And piggybacking on that, if you're not great at layout or you don't really know the ins and outs of layout, try to get a good cover format that like is distinctly identifiable with whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blackmail a graphic designer. Do like don't blackmail a graphic designer. We don't appreciate it. Or like truly Canva is your friend and it is free. Mostly.
Or you can pay a little bit of money for other options.
Yeah, like there are other always there like you find very quickly, and this is the reason like I went off on the aforementioned unnamed system. You find very quickly what you don't like, And that is so, it's weirdly important to know what doesn't work for you,
Yeah.
to understand what does. And then like, oh, it turns out I really need everything in giant letters.
Yeah.
That little things like that.
Also, if you're going to use a fun font, check every letter in that font and see
Oh.
how it looks, because nothing is more frustrating than reading a book and suddenly having like, is that an F or a P? I don't understand what's happening. Fun fonts are really cool at times for headers and stuff like that, but I do think that having a font that's very readable and clear in the actual book is really important, and not everybody does it.
Yeah,
Is this chapter
incredibly.
telling me to go puck myself? What?
Yeah.
God.
I will, and I'm going to point you back. I don't remember what episode it was, but there was an episode where we specifically talked about dyslexic fonts and
Oh,
the fact that
yeah.
they are bullshit and which fonts to use instead. As an educator, like legit studies have been done, and the dyslexia fonts are actually not helpful.
Really?
Yeah, they are very well intentioned, great people who like scientific studies have been done. But we did talk specifically about what fonts are great and are actually helpful for people who have dyslexia. So go
That's
back
good to
and
know,
if you
'cause
look.
I've been on shows that have used that as our captioning, and I'm glad to know. Like,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not actually a difference in the readability when they tested it with people with people who have dyslexia.
Yeah.
But we did talk specifically about which fonts do show improvement and are easier.
Isn't Comic Sans like one of the
I've heard
really
that.
high
Yeah.
ones that are high legibility fonts?
It was written for that. Actually, it was I think it was developed by. We actually talked about that, but I can't remember the exact thing right now because I'm on the spot about it. But we all the correct information, because I looked at all of the stuff that I've gone through like training specifically about this actually. So I brought out all my sheets and info and I talked all about it. So if you search through our backlog for the fonts and dyslexia, it should pop up pretty quick. And I think it was last season. I think it was
cool.
season 32. So it's been fairly recent. I was sitting in the seat when I did it. So the other thing is, like, once you have everything like kind of branded and focused, start building a community. It doesn't have to be a Discord, because that's a pain in the ass.
Yes.
But having a mailing list and get people to sign up everywhere you go. Have a tablet or your phone or whatever it is. So when you're sitting and running a game at a convention or at your friendly local gaming store, hey, sign up here and they get the next, your next release free. Or have one release that you only give to people who sign up for your mailing list. And then as you build that list, every time you release something, hey, 10% off if you're on this mailing list, here's a code for that for the first week. And then eventually you'll have a whole bunch of people, and those people will then probably be much more likely to buy your next thing, especially if they have a small discount, and then run that thing for their friends. And then those friends might sign up for your mailing list, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And that certainly ties into the question of, is it feasible for an individual creator to build a name off an adventure? I mean, it is possible, but you do have to get yourself out there.
Yeah.
And so you work on building your own community, work on building your own network of followers and supporters, but you also have to go out there and you have to talk to people.
And run it.
Yeah. Run it.
So you hate it.
And run it for people who publish games too. Talk to people who publish games. Actually, a lot of the people who publish it, we love talking shop.
Yeah.
And so we love meeting people, I mean, personally, I love talking shop and meeting people. So
I want to add to that, as a writer in the more broader sense. One thing you definitely need to know early on, if you're going to try to make work as a writer in any field, gaming or otherwise, other writers are not your competition. Like,
yes.
they are your community. There's been a lot.
Yes.
There's a big thing on TikTok recently with book writing, where a book author went on Goodreads and wrote fake bad reviews for other authors' books,
Holy
and she lost her book deal over it. And because, other writers are your community, they're not your competition.
Yeah.
People are not going to not buy other games to buy your games. They're going to buy your games and other games. So, it's writing, especially at an independent level, is an all tides raise all ships kind of thing. You definitely you actually want to cultivate people who are actively excited to buy games and look for games. You don't want to tear down people who are creating things in the same field you are.
Yeah, especially with TTRPGs.
Yeah.
We are a tiny, tiny little community. And especially when you start talking about people publishing, it seems like there's a billion people on DM's Guild, and there kind of is. But when you're talking about people who are really putting in the legwork and really starting to talk, everybody knows each other or knows somebody who knows them. And it's like 6 degrees of separation, but like
Yeah.
halved. It's like 3 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
And
So
they all
like the
talk.
minute you, they
Yeah.
all talk.
Surprisingly small.
Yeah,
Actually.
like incredibly small, like
Yeah.
so weirdly small. Like I found out one of my cosplay friends from years ago is now the CEO of Steve Jackson Games.
Oh wow!
wow.
That's
I
awesome.
was like, oh shit, Meredith. And I like messaged her on Facebook.
What if you're
I'm
like, oh my God, Steve Jackson? Like,
Well, and also like he was on my podcast once and told us we were stupid. So cool.
Oh,
Wow.
No, it was really funny. We did like an interview with him, and
Oh.
Stork asked him a really bad question. And it was
okay.
hilarious. And Steve Jackson was like, "Well, that's a dumb question." All of us just lost our shit. It was really funny.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
No, yeah, it wasn't like a bad.
I'm glad you told
Oh,
a better
yeah,
context.
yeah, yeah.
It's like,
Sorry.
wait,
Goodness.
what?
Context. Yeah, he told Stork he was really dumb. So that makes everything better.
Who hasn't?
Yeah.
I haven't.
But anyway, so it's just like incredibly small, and everybody's like, especially people who are not indie, like go back to that discussion.
What do you think indie
Yeah,
means?
no, but they kind of bump around, and it's kind of a musical
Yeah.
chairs of a lot of different shops, especially kind of the mid-sized shops that can't necessarily afford to have staff full time for everything. So they hire people, for projects, and then they move on to the next project.
Yeah.
So it's very small. So be nice to people and don't shit talk people.
yes.
That's advice
wanted-
for every industry. We all talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can criticize products. Like I do that all the time.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know.
Sometimes you might be on an advice show for Happy Jacks, and you might start criticizing a product, not knowing that the person who wrote for that product is at the table with you while you're talking about it. That might be a thing that happened. Jay, I want to ask you to get confirmation on this as someone who actually is actively working in this field more than I am, because I do a lot of freelance writing. I write about gaming more than I write actual games. Like I write a lot for D&D Beyond. I've written for
Yeah.
Nerdist about games. But like this question about, is it feasible for an individual creator to build a name off of adventure or module writing enough to successfully make that work? I think the answer to that question is yes, but I also think that the reality is more likely you're gonna put your work out there almost to then get hired by companies who are already making games to hire you to freelance write content for them. Do you think that's pretty accurate? Like
Yeah.
there's people who want to make an actual living off of this kind of stuff? Or
Yeah.
seasonal.
Yeah,
side
it
gig?
is. It is. And I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression. When we're talking about indie writers and stuff, I have a mainline gig.
Yeah.
Like writing is not my main gig. It is my side hustle.
That's true for most writers. These
Yeah,
days.
yeah,
Not just-
exactly.
Not just
right,
gaming.
right.
Like, that's right.
So I do want to put out there that yes, you can make a name for yourself, but even if you make a name for yourself, it might not amount to a whole lot fiscally.
It's not gonna buy you a house.
But it is certainly satisfying, and it's wonderful again to just kind of meet people out there, especially like when I see people on like YouTube who've run APs of modules that I've written. I love that. That's great. I'm reaching folks.
Yeah.
And again, I can write something very distinctly in my mind, and somebody will run it in a completely different way that is just wonderful to watch.
Yeah.
There's so many.
So that's sort of the big
yeah.
joy of it.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many different ways to go about this. And it really is an individual choice and deciding what you're passionate about. Because you're probably like, I have a publishing company I've started. I have zero plans. Do you know how much money I'd have to make off of my publishing company to make up for my teacher salary and my someday pension and all my health insurance? Like, so much. So it's not in my plans to give up my day job. But there are people who do this. Like Olivia Hill is amazing. She's a designer, and she wrote I Hunt, and that game went wild, and she was able to buy a house. So you never know. Yeah, it's amazing. So it's you never know what's going to do. You need to decide, what are you passionate about? Are you passionate about writing stuff for D&D? If you are, you need to realize like DM's Guild and stuff like that takes a percentage. If you're like, hey, I just want to write adventures, you have to kind of like roll the dice. You won't have as big an audience base. But if you're writing like generic adventures, like what Riley mentioned earlier, even if you make half as many sales, you might actually make more money if you're not giving the percentage to Wizards of the Coast. So you really have to like parse where your passion is, because that's the reason you're doing it, first of all.
Yeah.
And then from there, try and decide and maximize, okay, where am I going to make money off of this? Like you already are talking about building an audience base by giving stuff away free. That's a great strategy. So thinking about that and like looking at it long term. Maybe it's going to be something where you give stuff away. Like maybe you'll release stuff on your own website, and then eventually it's put on DM's Guild later. So then you don't have to, there's a lot of different things and legalities involved.
Or vice versa, you might put it on DM's Guild for now, and then you might think, you know what, actually, if I write outside of the D&D box, write my own stuff, but I have enough people who like what I'm doing, they might buy from, similar to people who like start an Etsy store, and then eventually are like, you know what, actually, I can make more money if I go like on my own site and separate from this, or I sell it at cons or at fairs or whatever.
Yeah.
Or maybe you do want to become a freelancer and start writing for these companies. We have tons of friends who go that route.
Yeah.
Most of them don't have staff writers anymore. Most of the time people get hired for specific projects, like you mentioned, Radiant Citadel and a bunch of things like that. So they get hired, like we were talking about a minute ago, for a project, and then they go and find another project to work on. It's very much like industry, like movie industry work.
Yeah.
So,
I write a bunch for Wizards for D&D Beyond. I'm not a staff writer for Wizards. I don't get the salary. I get paid per article. If I don't get articles for a while, I don't get money for a while. That's just how it is.
So it's weird because like I know people who make more money doing that, and then I know other people who make more money on indie stuff because they don't have to share anything. So it's just do what you're passionate about, and then try and find a way to make a little bit of money off of it. There's not one way.
Not to go too far down the previous rabbit hole, but it did come up in the chat when we were talking about it earlier, and so I do want to circle back to the indie versus not indie conversation. When we were talking about indie versus not indie, I think we were more focused on publishing companies, not individual writers.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I think that like even people who are writing for D&D content on DM's Guild, I think you'd still would consider those indie writers, where they've basically written their own independent creation. They just happen to use a marketplace that part of the fee of using that marketplace is you have to pay the publishing company. Like that is a deal that Wizards has created with DM's Guild specifically of like, we're so big that people want to write content for our stuff. We would love to profit off of that. So they use DM's Guild as a way of doing that, of being like, cool, we'll profit, but you also profit. But that is pretty independently created stuff. That's not, when we were talking about indie versus non-indie, I think we really meant like
Published
does Hunters count as indie or not? Like, I think it's kind of in the middle. It's murky. It's also tough because like, are we saying indie or not, or are we saying like success, like profitable or not?
Yeah,
like,
there you go.
Like there is that is like weird. It's a weird murky area, and unfortunately, I think with gaming especially, and when you're using IP especially, it's really hard to say what is or isn't. Like I think part of why Happy Jacks is indie is because you actively don't court any sponsorship or IP payment for doing things.
Yeah.
Whereas like I think like the now defunct, I don't know if you would say Saving Throw wasn't indie because we had sponsored shows from D&D or Pathfinder. Like it's still pretty indie.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's still that whole other, well, everybody had another job qualifier. So
Yeah, but I do think it's possible for people to live full time off of their studio and
It
still
is,
be
it
indie.
is.
And that's
Yeah.
what I
Yeah,
want to
totally.
Oh,
stress.
absolutely. Yeah, no, I think it comes back to the overlord thing. Like, how many overlords do you actually have? Because, like, in the same vein, Queen's Court. Well, yeah, but Jax is very anti having a sponsor Queen's Court to sponsored stuff, and it is the thing of like when we do it, we kind of have the overlord of like, this is how we're like, this is what we propose, and they're like, all right, well, these are the things that we will give you for that, or this is what we'd like you to do.
But even then, I wouldn't say Queen's Court's not in indie.
Oh, Queen's Court's aggressively indie. We make money.
We're like aggressively indie. We're like giving the bird to people.
Yeah, Happy Jackson.
Whereas, like, I would consider, and maybe I don't know enough about the ownership of the company. I could be wrong with this entirely, but I would think of Evil Hat as an indie game company.
Yeah.
And Evil Hat,
Yeah,
they have enough money to sponsor games, so like they must be doing at least. I don't know. I don't know if Evil Hat has day jobs or
They
not.
do. They have
but
day jobs.
They do,
Yeah,
but one of them's independently wealthy.
but yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I think bringing it back to writing, I sort of consider almost all writers in the TTRPG space indie because they're either freelance. So yes, they're writing for Wizards of the Coast, but like I said, it's very much a gig thing, a gig economy. You're hired for this book. And then you might get hired for the next book, or maybe not. So I still feel like the writers themselves are indie, even if the company isn't indie. Or you're like, you know what you're saying just a second ago about DM's Guild, where you're totally indie and like, hey, take 40% of my profit so that I can use your name.
I think most writers working in most spaces are actually indie writers. Like I think like the rare examples might be someone who has been like a staff writer for like a news article, like a news agency or whatever, and you actually have a salaried job and you're there. That might not be considered indie, but most writers do work on a contract basis. And if you work on a contract basis, it's hard to say you're not an indie writer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm like truly like just digging through my brain, like a single writer who has like a salaried position.
Yeah.
No.
Like I write freelance for Nerdist. I'm an indie writer, even though the writing I do is being paid for by Legendary.
Yeah.
But Nerdist does have staff writers and editors who work on the Legendary payroll, and I don't think they would be considered indie writers.
Yeah, I
So.
can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
But typically,
Wild.
Yeah. I mean, we can keep going. Sorry, I was going to start the next email. I misread the pause. I
No,
apologize.
No, you're good.
I will always fill a pause. So
Can I
move on.
take another minute?
Yeah.
real quick?
All
the time.
Because because
Can
you
I actually
mentioned,
answer the question?
well, no. Because you mentioned releasing
You're talking back to Mike again?
Yeah,
Okay.
talking back to Mike. Yeah, sorry. Because you mentioned releasing on the DMs Guild, so there are a couple of important things to remember. Your topic has a platform, right? Or each platform has its own like stipulations. So if you're going to release at the DMs Guild, and you're interested you're interested with not necessarily making that profit share with, say, Wizards of the Coast, whatever. Just remember that if you want to write with any of the Wizards of the Coast IP, like writing within the Forgotten Realms or writing with a particular monster that is specific to D&D, the only place you're going to be able to publish material without getting slapped down is the DMs Guild. And that's why people publish in the DMs Guild. Either that or maybe they just don't know that there are other places to do it, right? But if you're going to do completely original material based on 5th edition, you can publish with Drive-Thru RPG and not pay as big a royalty, not pay as big a profit share. You can publish on itch, you can publish on your own website and like get everything for yourself if you do it for your own website.
Yeah, and you can also like file the serial numbers off.
Yeah, exactly.
The tentacle floating eye.
Yeah. That is absolutely stuff that is
The
done.
observer.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
The blinker, if you will.
Yes,
The
exactly.
fan.
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Okay.
The octopus brain eating thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So just be mindful too. I mean, do your
Be
research
mindful-
on the
wait.
the mindful layer.
Yeah.
Yeah, FILET.
Yeah, exactly.
Which you can have because it's Lent right now.
Right, yeah. Sure. Perfect.
But
Should I go? I should go.
No,
Should I go on that
I'm
line?
here for
Should I
this.
force Costanza that? Like, I'm out.
I don't know if there's
Cheers.
Better. Yeah, I don't know if there's better than that, but I still want you to leave.
Dead.
So yeah, like do your research on whatever platform you want to publish in. If you're just going to publish your own homebrew setting, you don't have to go through the DMs Guild. There are pros to that because there's a huge audience on the DMs Guild, but there are other ways to do it too.
Yeah. Oh god.
Imagining branding your whole thing around like, fuck you, big publishers. Like, that's a look. You can do it like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we've done. Literally,
I know, hold on,
I
wait a
just
minute.
opened
Yeah.
the bird and a minute ago.
True.
Oh, that's great.
Oh,
That's
man.
great. I'm half terrified of going to Gamma and like people being like, "Oh wait, you're that person." It's like, oh god, I've been so.
This looked familiar to
Yeah.
I feel like I recognize you, Cousin.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
The double bird, like the Cadave flipping off.
I was gonna say the Stu may have retired from Happy Jacks, but the grumpy old man energy still remains.
Yeah, it's so sad.
It's the legacy.
It is the legacy of the
legacy.
grumpy
Well,
old
when your
man.
heart beats under the floorboards of the place, it's eventually going to spill out into the thoughts.
I have to go.
All right, mailbag number 2. Who wants to read this? I'm not doing it.
I mean,
I
not
can take
it.
it.
I already read.
I can take it. Hello, Happy Jackers. Charger347 here with another email. This time on the topic of where's the line on how complicated I should make my magical items? I've always been very imaginative, but also admittedly a bit persnickety about magic MacGuffins I hand out. When I make magic items, I always want to have mechanics to make them flavorful, but I often make them overly complex. Feel ya. It's like the difference between a decent sub sandwich, which expertly pairs a handful of complementary meats, cheeses, and sauces, versus the monstrosity that was the Arby's Meat Mountain. Pointless side tangent. I will admit that I did decimate a meat mountain in one sitting back in my day, as it was the fashion of the time, but I digress.
Have you tried a mind fillet? Like, get 2 for $3.
Okay.
Fantasy Arby's.
Anywho, oh Lord. Anywho, I feel the best thing to remember when flavoring magic items is that there's a fine line between a mechanic.
Horsey sauce.
Wait, what was that?
The best thing for flavoring magic items is horsey
Horsey
sauce. Sorry.
I'm
continue.
so sorry. We'll get through this.
Oh my
I
god.
will not look at you while you read that.
Okay, I'm sorry. Side digression. I love Arby's.
do too,
You know,
they have the meat,
I
you know?
adore Arby's. Yeah,
There's
yeah.
not enough
yeah,
in LA.
so-
Ugh.
yeah.
There used to be one
yeah.
over here that didn't have a drive-through, which is a terrible choice to make for a
what the
coffee.
fuck?
And-
Seriously.
Anyway, sorry. This is a
Okay,
long
yeah,
email,
sorry.
so I will let you get
Charger
through it.
347. We greatly apologize.
You know what? That's your fault bringing up
bringing
Arby's.
up
We're
Arby's.
all very
Yeah,
hungry right
yeah,
now.
I know,
All right.
seriously. Anywho, in the email, I feel the best thing to remember when flavoring magic items is that there's a fine line between mechanic and a complication. For example, years ago, I wanted to make a pair of magical swords that were magically linked and polarly opposed. One fire and one ice. Simple enough, but also pretty boring.
First of all, I disagree with that.
Get it?
I just saw it. I just saw it. I just saw it.
It's Dritz. It's Dritz. Swords.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I added a mechanic that the two swords were linked in such a way that attacks from one blade would power up the other. That's pretty cool. Using a super simplistic and, in all honesty, not realistic version of thermodynamics, I devised a system where the fire sword would pull heat from the cold sword, and the cold sword would funnel heat into the fire sword.
Oh.
Yeah,
This is
I like
simple
that.
enough. Yeah, that's
Okay.
awesome. That's really cool.
And then I'm sure that's the end of it. And that's the end of the.
Yeah, it's not complicated at all. This is simple enough and would work fine, but I decided to add another mechanic to this system in which, instead of two swords, another version of this concept could use a weapon connected to an article of armor instead. The weapon would either inflict cold damage and offer cold resistance by forcing heat into the armor, or inflict heat damage and offer heat resistance by siphoning heat out of the armor and making it colder. And here's where I should have stopped. And if I had, I might have actually gotten around to using them in a game, but I kept on adding more and more mechanics and ultimately made them too complicated for someone who wasn't me. And the person who had the damn magic item concept floating around, made it too complicated for someone who wasn't me. The person who had the damn magic item concept floating around in his head for the last few months at the time. I made it so different weapons and armors could swapped out on the fly. I made different mods that could be attached that would increase output and reduce cooldown. I added special attacks abilities to the weapons, /abilities to the weapons, so that I could justify the concept of having cooldowns that could be decreased. I just kept going on and on and on.
Wow.
You've created a subclass here.
Yeah.
You've-
Yeah.
Cool subclass.
Or you made a really cool weapon for a video game where where the
Yes.
computer does all the crunching.
Yeah.
I did the cardinal sin of creation. I let perfection become the enemy of completion. I added too much complication, way more than anyone would want to learn the mechanics for. So, I leave you with this advice.
Oh, they're giving us advice on the show.
Isn't it nice?
I know.
We're excited.
Advice show.
Make your magical items interesting, but also reasonable. For example, well, I'll cut that now. For example, my favorite magical item
Can you do it
I've
again?
ever
I like it. I like
created.
it.
Yeah, I like that.
For example, my favorite magical item that I have ever created, the Sucker's Stone.
Oh my.
Wild.
Okay, you indulge us. You don't have to keep doing it.
Yeah,
It was a good voice.
Is that related to like the Dune popcorn bucket or something?
I don't know. I'm
Convinced. I'm gonna plow through that right now
Don't
because
stop.
we need to.
Don't
we,
say plow.
Convinced. I'm gonna put on the gravitas voice again.
You missed all the
Convinced.
Arby's talk while you were gone. Yeah, that's Arby's talk. We had the meats.
Convinced with the historical and factual thirst pebbles in mind. I honestly have no idea where this is going to go in the next two
Each
paragraphs.
sentence of this letter is a gold mine.
It's a journey.
Charger 347. I love you.
Yeah.
It's just like I never know what you're gonna say next.
Convinced with the historical and factual thirst pebbles in mind. Thirst pebbles being small, smooth stones that people put under their tongues to force themselves to salivate. allowing someone to trick themselves into not being as thirsty because it keeps the mouth moist with saliva.
Oh, okay.
The sucker's stone is a magically enchanted stone that, when placed under the tongue, generates a flavorless, nutrient-rich, sloppy gruel that, as long as it remains in the creature's mouth, staves off hunger and thirst.
Wow.
As a very OD&D kind of
Yeah.
magic item, if you ask me.
God stuff. God
That,
stuff.
that is
The
so
nastiest gob stuff.
not what I was thinking with all of this.
No, I'm.
That's not what they're trouble.
Kimmy, you and I were in the same band.
We were thinking all the dirty things like, oh, I could write a terrible verse about. Why would I need more saliva? Sorry, go ahead, continue.
Bumble True in the chat just wrote, I don't know if I'm grossed out or aroused.
You know what? That's how you know it's a good night.
There's, yeah, why not both?
A little bit of both.
Yeah. Both exist at the same time. A lot, actually. Okay, the fun mechanic of the sucker stone is that the gruel is so offensively bland and flavorless that the user must make checks every hour to maintain the willpower to keep the sucker stone in their mouths. I cannot speak.
So
I
glad
cannot
you read
speak of this.
You're reading this and not me.
I cannot speak to this conflict. But anyway,
Oh God, heaven help our editor. Thank you. We love you. Sorry. Good.
You know what? Bless you. You don't. I think you're not gonna edit it. Just put it out.
Just-
Be okay with it.
yeah.
Just accept the laughter.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Otherwise, the user must spit the stone out and wait an hour before they can use it again.
Look, just give me an hour. I'll be okay. That's what I need a moment. I need
Of course,
time.
just
They'd be spitting at the end of that.
It's fine.
Oh, God. Be warned, though. Each unsuccessful check increases the difficulty of using the stone again until the user has eaten a full, satisfying meal to reset their palate.
Okay.
Pineapple, perhaps.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
All right.
Okay,
That's
everything
the stone. You
almost
dip
there.
the stone in pineapple.
yeah.
Almost there. You got this.
We're
You got
so
this.
close.
You got this. We're with you.
Two more
You got
paragraphs. It's a simple mechanic. It has a simple mechanic and a simple enough complication to make it interesting, but ultimately not unfeasible. Unfeasible, Jesus. Not unfeasible. Jesus. Hopefully you all got a kick out of this silly little magic item.
I think we did.
Success. Good
Thank
job.
you. And maybe I helped foster a little thought worm that will become one of y'all's new favorite magic item that y'all create for yourselves. Best, Charger 347 on the Discord.
Yeah, I wouldn't summer name that either.
How little or big was the thought worm? So,
Charger,
You know,
you've
it's
ruined
not
us.
imagine the size of the thought worm. It's what you do with the thought
do
worm.
that.
What you do with the thought?
not the size.
I love that you're actually crying.
It's you look at it, you're like, I should call him.
The thought worm. The thought worm is not a D&D IP, by the way, so you don't have to publish that on the DM's Guild.
Yeah, that's all yours.
Oh man.
Put that on DM's Guild, you'll make a fortune.
Oh my god.
Oh man.
Sorry, what was the question?
No,
I don't think it was a question. That was
It was sharing wisdom and a hilarious story.
It's
Yeah.
I don't know
upsetting,
whether I
love
should
it.
have read this here or on Pornhub or something.
yeah. I think
Anyway.
The
overall,
Happy Jack OnlyFans.
Yes, Happy Jacks After Dark.
Yeah. Happy Jack's night.
oh my gosh, that was
Alright.
wild. That was
I
so
love
good.
it.
I
so I
wanted
think
to
like we can
drink so
distill this
badly.
down into a thirsty stone of a nugget of an idea. It's basically that
Don't say
like
nugget.
sometimes I knew what I was doing. I knew. I was aware of what it was I was. Yeah. Don't act like I don't know.
So sorry,
Is that basically like sometimes you have an idea for an item and you just keep adding mechanics to it
Yeah.
until it becomes a thing that no player wants to touch. And basically the idea is that your magic item should never become like a hindrance to role playing and never become a hindrance to game flow. So like this sucker stone, even though it was definitely a hindrance to conversation at the table, it makes sense. It's like, okay, here's how it functions. Here's the way it's a problem in your day, and that's the end of it. Whereas the swords started out great, but yeah, you're right. After a while, you're like, okay, well now I'm adding an armor, and now I do this. Now you're like you're adding an entirely new way for someone to like design their fighting styles around it.
Yeah.
Whereas like. Yeah, I think like I made that mistake. I will say with the magic item, I love magic items. I love creating them in games. I love creating them as gifts for players.
Yeah.
I like to give a player a magic item on their birthday or near their birthday if I can, if I have a group going. And I had a player. I ran a game that didn't last during the pandemic over Zoom with people who had never played D&D before, and so a lot of them like the way that I get new players to think of how to like build their characters is I ask them about pop culture characters they really like, and then I like explain to them like, here's how I break that character down into a D&D class or some class. Sometimes people take it very literally and they make a D&D character that's based on, which I've done too, so it's very fine with that. But so I had a player who was playing essentially Green Arrow. And had made a ranger and was like really excited about playing like an archer-based character. And I was like, you know what's really fun about Green Arrow is in the comics at least, Green Arrow has a bunch of really wild and interesting fun arrows. So I was like, I'm gonna make a cool quiver where when you pull an arrow out, you roll a dice to find out what random item that is. The problem with it is now you have to make a chart of like 10 different arrows and you have to make the person roll on it. So then you have to be like, okay, what I'm going to do instead is have you just roll at the start of the day to know what arrows are in your quiver. And like, but like the problem is then you get to a point where like some of these are really OP and I don't want to give my player access to a whole bag of exploding arrows that they permanently have. So then I was like, okay, well now I'm going to make it so you only get 3 a day. You have to feed arrows to it. And then it's like there's special things where if you roll a natural 20, you get a full one of each. But if you roll one, the whole thing's destroyed. Like after a while, the person's like, I'm never going to use this because I don't know what the hell is happening anymore. So.
Yeah, the solution, I have a friend of mine help me build a birthday weapon, which was a gun of wonder, basically. But we Mad Libsed the effect.
Yeah.
So it was like you rolled 3 times and you got this damage, this type of damage for this, like, and that kind of solved the like that solved the chart thing, because you know, instead of prefiguring out what all your arrows did, it was like something funky is going to happen, but you do have to buy into that whimsy. It is a very wild magic sorcerer stuff.
I think that plays better for people who already know the system well and are comfortable with it. I think when you have a newer player, it's a little bit tough to be like, hey, this arrow, you don't know what's going to happen when you fire it.
And you have to be comfortable enough to be like, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to enjoy doing it. Because like you could have, again, the Rod of Wonder in D&D has that too. Like, I love wild magic.
Sorry, I was still in the last email and you said Rod.
It was great.
You're right.
Rod of Wonder.
The Rod of Wonder.
That is the name of my
the Rod of Wonder.
It was not a small thought worm.
Yeah.
No. Again, it's not the size of the thought worm.
No.
Yeah.
How do you use the Rod?
Rod of Wonder.
Ironically, similarly, the other magic item I made for that group, well, I made a couple, but one of them that was very similar to this in a less dirty way, the Sucker Stone, is I had a character who constantly, as her character, would ask if people had sandwiches. So I gave her a magic item that was a sandwich, and it was a sandwich bag, and every day when you open it, there's a new
sandwich.
side of it.
I love
and
those.
It's essentially lambus bread, where
Yeah.
you're now fed for the day. And I made it basically a replaceable potion of healing. So it's like, yeah, once a day you eat the sandwich and you're healed for this much damage. And like that was a perfect way to here's the cool thing for your character. And,
I love that.
I'm a big fan of any kind of useless item. I love a cup that is always full of a beverage that you want at the time it's done.
Yeah.
This listen, never ending sandwich. Mint.
Yeah.
My actual like jumping off. This is actually something that you could use in your own shit. Is I love the an item that's like a +1 to something, but it needs to be fed, and that means it needs a role play thing.
Yeah.
So I have not to in my home game. I have like one of my big like joke items that I'll build for people are like weapons and things that have separation anxiety.
Yes.
So like
Awesome.
yeah, it's like this sword will cry if you're not holding it.
Yeah.
Like
Dungeons and Daddies did a great one where it was a sentient weapon that also judged you for the murders you were going to commit with it. It was like a Nietzschean sword. It was very funny. Like it would give you, what's this amazing you want? By the way, Rose in the chat just mentioned the Cloak of Billowing, which is what I was going to say. The Cloak of Billowing is one of my favorite useful items.
Yeah.
It's all role play. My favorite role play, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but there's a D&D magic item that is just a pipe that when you smoke it, it basically is the Gandalf like ships going through. It's like
cool.
you can make whatever weird shapes you want with the pipe, and like there's no actual mechanical benefit to it. If I'm a DM, I'll give somebody like persuasion or like but otherwise
try to distract someone with it or
but
something
it's
like
just
that.
a fun thing. Like you blow in a pipe and it makes cool shapes with smoke. It's like what a great item.
Oh man, Cloak of Billowing. I think of like all my cosplay days where it was like someone awkwardly throwing your cape and then running out of the picture, so you take pictures.
I have been the arm that sent it out.
That's how you get all those amazing like flying pictures and stuff like that. It's like, no, it's just awkward. Like tons of
Yeah.
awkward. I would do anything for a cape, for a cloak of billowing. Oh,
I do love a real item that is functional, but it's the amulet of the drunkard, where if you drink a pint of beer, you're healed. Like it's a healing. It turns 1 pint of beer a day into a potion of healing, basically.
Nice.
It's really great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
that's amazing.
But yeah, I love any weapon, any item that requires role play to go with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I'm the same way. I want anything to have like.
Yeah, I think too, like, if you're creating an item, if it does start getting a little too cumbersome, just think about how you can scale that back. Right?
Yeah.
But certainly, like, let your imagination run wild,
Yeah.
right? What I will say is that sometimes an item with one interesting effect, like that's a little simpler, but has one interesting effect that kind of subverts the way the game is played, is much more interesting than like the big epic legendary item that controls all the undead and has them make you all the sandwiches and take you to all the Arby's and whatnot. You know what I mean?
Oh man, bag of Arby's.
I'm always a fan of a magic item that lets you change one letter in a spell and change what the whatever.
Yeah,
the new
yeah.
letter- I've
That's
seen a few
awesome.
versions of that. It's always very fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I work for the Hero Workshop, and we're a group of DMs who run D&D for kids as part of after-school programs. And we were sitting around having our weekly meeting, and we all kind of collectively came up with the idea of there are the bag of beans in D&D. We came up with the bag of Sean beans. And whenever something is going to deal you a killing blow, you grab a bean out of the bag and you throw it, and Sean Bean will take the hit for you.
That's hilarious.
But it's got to be related to like whatever movie it is. So if you're getting plugged with arrows, you pull out the bag of
You need the Boromir.
Lord of the
Boromir.
Rings, Sean Bean. And if you're about to fall off a large structure, you pull the Goldeneye Sean Bean.
So
Wow.
If you're about to take like slashing damage to the head, you pull the Game of Thrones Sean Bean.
so
Anyway,
fun.
that was a lot
That's
of fun.
good.
The Argyle bag of Sean Beans.
I like that a
Nice.
lot.
I
That's
love
Very
it.
good.
Yeah.
All right.
The wand of spell check. Oh my god.
Ooh, the wand of autocorrect. That's what it could be. Like,
Oh, man.
There is a magic
Autocorrect
item
the spell.
in Baldur's Gate 3 is a magic item called the Staff of the Mumbling Mage, and the way that it works is normally it just gives you Firebolt with a question mark, Firebolt, and like it gives you the access to the Firebolt cantrip, but like 1 out of every 6 times it does Fireball instead of Firebolt. So
Oh.
like, free Fireball, but you don't know when.
Oh, that's awesome.
Man,
I
I
have
love
a
that
story
shit.
about that. Good
I,
Lord.
Yeah.
one of my earliest games, and I know we're gonna wrap up, but speaking of magic of wild magic, is one of my first 5e game that I played in. I was a wild magic sorcerer, and like our second or third session, I had a wild magic surge, and it was a level 5 fireball went flying out of my
Centered
character
on you,
and
yeah.
almost TPK'd our entire party. It only
Love it.
didn't because we just out of pure luck. I mean, I was still alive because it was out of me, but out of pure luck, we had a guest player that session who was already playing a bard, and so luckily we had somebody who was still alive who had healing spells. Otherwise,
Yeah.
my
Jeez.
character carrying a bunch of dead bodies out of this cave.
I have been playing around a lot with the wild magic sorcerer bit stuff, and it is it ruins at A plots, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That was so fun. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for season 33, episode 10. Please support our amazing indie designer of the month, Anna Landon. And you can find her at annalandon.itch.io. If you go there, you can also find a link to her Patreon where you can get all her games for $5 a month. Thank you to our chat mod, James V, who worked really hard in chat tonight because there's some messy bots. And our amazing Patreons who keep us ad-free and independent and able to flip off all the sponsors.
Actually, you have a day job, so
I do have a day
you're
job.
already-
Yeah. Yes, we are funded by the California state government.
And the letter U.
Yeah, and the letter U. I'm a teacher. That's the
And
joke.
viewers like
I'm paid
you.
by tax
I was going
dollars.
for
and then-
Sesame Street, but I also
Oh.
appreciate you. as
Okay,
well.
thanks.
Yeah.
And then
The audience is you.
you,
Yeah.
by you, Patreons. So join at happyjacks.org/Patreon. I can remember those things. Happyjacks.org/Patreon. My name is Kimmy.
My name is Riley.
My name is Jay.
My name is Clara.
And today we're going to leave you with a song called, if I'd known, like, this is going to be such a naughty episode, I would left with a naughty song, but I didn't. I already put it in there. And it's Jenny of the Old Stones, which is a beautiful
Oh, that is a good
Jenny
bar
and the Sucker
song.
Stone.
Yeah. No. That might happen.
How dare you, Riley?
It is by a group called the Mary Sues, and you can find them at marysuesband.com. And if you listen to the cool guitar playing in it, it's me. So, thank you all so much, and we will see you next week, because it has stopped raining. So, yeah.
Oh, because it'll be
Next week will be
Strategic Con.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will be. Oh, yeah.
Live.
Live show.
Oh, from
Show will be on Saturday night, 7:30. And it usually gets a little off the rails, so it'll be fun.
I don't know
It'll
what
be
you're
great.
talking about.
I don't know. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
As opposed to tonight, which was very on the
Very
rails.
on the rails. Well,
Yeah.
there's a live studio audience, so there's like a lot more variables for
Yeah.
wildness.
Yeah.
Literally just
Oh, I'm not
Google.
running I'm running that same night you're doing that. I'm running my Doctor Who live show at Galley One that
Yeah.
doesn't begin on a rail. So
Oh, yeah.
It's like we
Exactly.
can't kidnap you for like an hour.
I'll
Yeah.
literally be doing my show at the time.
Yeah, I think so.
How dare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How dare.
I'll be just finishing up interviewing Alex Kingston and then going and doing my show. So you could not get me out of that building with a forklift.
No.
Like, I would be grabbing every possible surface I could.
Grappling like when you pick up your cat. They're like,
All right. We love you. We'll see you next week on Saturday. Bye.
High in the halls of the kings who are gone, Jenny would dance with her ghosts. The ones she had lost and the ones she had found, and the ones who had loved her the most. The ones who'd been gone for so very long, she couldn't remember their names. They spun her around on the damp old stones, spun away from all sorrow and pain, and she never